Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror. I am your host, Kevin L. Powers. I'm also the owner and operator of Something Wicked Entertainment and Events, and welcome to this podcast. Now, today, we have a unique opportunity to delve deep into a couple of holiday movies. We're going to be doing this separately, but releasing them at the same time.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. From everyone here, and that was Dave Watkins, who is a familiar voice on our podcast. Thank you, Dave, for gracing us with your knowledge and perspective for the movies we are talking about today.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but for everyone who's listened to the show before and knows Dave has delved deep with a lot of unusual films with me, and today will not be any different as we delve into Leprechaun 2 to make it a great St. Patty's Day today. So I want to thank you again for joining me on this conversation. I'm sure we will all be interested to hear what your thoughts are on this straight-to-video sequel.
Well, this one actually was the last one to get a theatrical release. It wasn't straight to DVD.
I kept thinking that the second one was also straight to DVD too.
Now the third one was the first one that was straight to DVD, I guess is what you would call it. But yeah, this one actually had a theatrical run, and it had about the same budget as the third one, but it was bigger budget than the first one. But it doesn't. Clearly, you have a bigger budget. You don't necessarily see that on screen. You don't see it on screen because they had to pay everybody more money because it's a sequel to the.
Yeah, I'm sure Warwick Davis got a big bump in his salary, and of course they have a lot more cameos from established character actors in this film.
Yeah, so this is a 1984 film, and it's supposedly a sequel to Leprechaun, but it doesn't seem to be telling the same story or even the same Leprechaun, even though it is played by Warwick Davis.
Yeah, I kind of take that every one of these movies are self-contained Leprechaun. He just played a Leprechaun in the movies, especially in some of the movies where he burns up or he dies on the screen.
Right. But he does seem like typically this Leprechaun's got some pretty good powers. He's pretty powerful, so he's often is shot or in a fatal way, and he's able to come back. But many times at the end of some of the Leprechaun films, he is seemingly completely destroyed. Like at the end of the first film, he is his which they didn't carry this over from the first film. He had was it clover or shamrock? A four-leaf clover was that they shot it into his mouth, and he fell into the well and then melted into the well, and that's how that one ended. And they don't ever bring this shamrock in, they don't bring it into this one. That's not the new weapon against him is a wrought iron, apparently, for the second one.
I've noticed that they kind of changed the rules with every film, just to suit whatever story they're telling.
Yeah, it does seem to be that way. They're like, I guess they were like thinking that four-leaf clover, and then we gotta have a clover patch. They got to go find a clover, so let's just get rid of it and bring up something like wrought iron because that's everywhere, I guess.
Yeah, well, even though we haven't gotten into the film yet, I'm sure there's a lot of horror fans out there who have actually seen this movie, despite how infamously, questionably bad it is. Everyone tends to watch these movies because of Warwick Davis, and then of course the rules to the Leprechauns just change dramatically. Like you don't see him chasing after and having himself forced to clean shoes whenever shoes are thrown at him. The four-leaf clover doesn't have anything to do with anything. Of course, they add the whole thing about the iron that could kill or imprison a leprechaun in this film.
But they do some interesting stuff though. The beginning of it takes place in really early Ireland.
Once upon a time.
Yeah, once upon a time, and the days are like ye old days or something. But I actually kind of like that opening, and he's got a slave who's got a kind of a necklace, or he's got some kind of lock necklace around his neck, and I like the kind of back and forth between them as they're walking, because you don't see that a lot with these Leprechaun films. You don't see him walking with somebody and having a kind of back and forth conversation, even though the conversation is a little antagonistic, and he's a pretty malicious person, even though but it's interesting seeing that back and forth because it's kind of rare for these films.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because you never see him with a partner or a slave or anybody like that with any of the films except for this one, really. I think except for his bride of some sorts in the fourth one. But with this one, he's searching for a bride, bride in this film, which makes
Yeah.
a different dynamic than some of the other films.
Right. I think almost this one could almost be called like the Bride of Leprechaun or something, they're searching for a bride, But I think that the first one, I really like the first one a lot. This one, they kind of turn it a little differently, but it would have been interesting, I guess, to see if they were able to keep continuity from the first one to this one. Of course, they don't. They even get a different director. The original director was working on Rumpelstiltskin at the time when they shot this film, and he was originally going to do it, but then it ended up happening at the same time, so we had to kind of bow out. He kind of stays on as a producer, but he never directed any more Leprechauns after the first one.
No. Which is, I don't know. Hopefully, he went off to direct something other than Leprechauns and Rumpelstiltskin films. I can't remember.
He's done nothing like too big, but he has done some things here and there. He kind of trickled off, and most of his stuff kind of was lower budgets, even lower than Rumpelstiltskin. Or Rumpelstiltskin had a pretty decent budget, but after that, I don't think that one did too good, and so he was kind of offered less stuff as it went on. So, but I mean, really though, if you look at the first Leprechaun, I think it's pretty well directed and written as well.
Yeah, well, the thing is, if he had stayed on to the Leprechaun franchise, he'd probably still be going strong right now.
yeah, maybe so, because it's like the only one of those franchises is the Chucky franchise, where it kind of kept the same writer was involved with all of them, which was kind of kept continuity with that franchise. But all the other ones like Jason and Freddy and Halloween and Michael Myers, they're all over the place. Different directors for each film, and they all have I think a lot of times the studio's more involved than the directors, and they're just kind of pushing what they think is gonna make money.
Oh yeah,
unlike those other franchises, this one went straight to video pretty quick. The other ones had. I don't even think Friday the 13th's ever gone straight to video.
No, I think
Halloween. Yeah,
Hellraiser may be the other franchise that went straight to video after a while, but most of the mainstream ones didn't. I don't think.
Yeah, I think Hellraiser went after the fourth one. They went to video after that.
Yeah,
and it got a lot worse real quick.
But speaking about Leprechaun 2, it kind of is an unusual one because it starts off in like Once Upon a Time Ago, and of course, the Leprechaun has a slave, and it is revealed really quickly that the person that the Leprechaun fancies for a bride is the daughter of his slave.
Right, and it's kind of an interesting thing because I think the Leprechaun it is not really apparent in the scene, but he probably had to have known that it was his daughter, and he kind of set the whole scene up just because he probably just likes getting the reaction from the for the dad of seeing him wanting to be with his daughter. It's probably part of the fun for him to have that reaction.
Oh yeah, and then I'm trying to. Then of course, all things go completely wrong, and he can't get her as his bride. So he
when he actually tells the guy, I should have written down his name, but he gets his slave. But he tells him while they're walking and having the dialogue. I guess he's kind of bragging about the whole thing. He's like, well, basically what's going to happen. She's going to sneeze. I'm going to make her sneeze 3 times, and if somebody doesn't say God bless you after that, then she's my bride. And that's the random rules that are made up for it. But then he makes her sneeze, and then the dad says God bless you, and I guess that ruins the whole thing. It's kind of like with the wishes. Once you say it, it can't be undone. So then the warlock flips out and kills the dad and
curses the family.
Yeah.
I forget how many. Did he say 1,000 years? He says something, but he cursed his father.
Yeah.
And in present time, we have it where I guess the great granddaughter of the slave is now
played by the same actress.
Played by the same actress.
Because that happens.
Available. Well,
let's see what now.
Available. Well, half
Oh, yeah.
available because she has a boyfriend who just doesn't pay enough attention to her, which is quite funny. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, but he's trying to run a business with. He's got like a. He's got some. There. Like he's running some kind of like. One thing about this too that's cool about this particular Leprechaun film is it actually takes place on St. Patrick's Day,
mm,
in the past and the future. Some of them don't, but this one is on St. Patrick's Day, and they kind of show it a some, but they could have done better, obviously, with the St. Patrick's Day and tying it in. But they do have some of it going on. But he's doing some kind of like a tour, like a kind of a ghost tour. And there's another guy. He's like an older guy named Morty. The main character's name's Cody.
Cody.
And yeah, and the Morty guy is supposed to be driving this hearse and bringing these people around town and talking about haunted places. But that Morty guy's a drunk and he's in the bathroom. He's actually in the bar getting drunk and he can't drive. So then Cody has to do the tour, and so his girlfriend gets all, her name's Bridget, gets all in a huff about it, and they seem like they have a pretty good thing going on before that happens. But she's kind of like, of course they're young, and she's kind of doesn't really quite understand why he's doing it. She kind of takes it. She's kind of like a little selfish about it, I think, because I mean, I don't understand why he would she would expect him to walk away from like a paying gig. It's not like he's all goofing around or something. He's actually working.
You're right, and you kind of get almost, and I don't know how much this plays into the whole film as a whole, but you kind of get the impression that she reacts like this because he's probably done it 1,000 times where he bailed Morty out of a situation like this.
Right.
He's
Yeah.
supposed to, his job is supposed to kind of reel him in, and Cody's supposed and Morty's supposed to drive them and finish it off. So in
Yeah.
theory,
So I guess really though, it seems like a pretty good gig, because you do that and then you just walk away. You think that you think that wouldn't be the end of it. You think you'd have to wait around for him to come back with the tour and then try to get some more people to do it. But I don't know. I guess that's all it is though. One time around.
yeah. But it's one of those. It's one of those jobs that it, as plot wise and character wise, it shows a lot about the characters because it shows how greedy Morty is in regards to money and getting money, and how that mentality is slowly figuring into Cody's mentality. He doesn't
Right.
normally think about money and greed. He only does that because Morty has this philosophy about it.
Yeah. He has like three rules for it, and one of them's like you never turn down a paying customer, and he clearly should have here. He can't drive around a tour bus drunk. Morty's he's just in a bad state. He's clearly got a little bit of talent, but he drinks too much, and there's no way he would have been able to do this tour, and they should have just get refunded the money and been on with their day, and everything would have been fine.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, the thing is, and this plays into most all of these movies because it has to do with Leprechaun and someone's greed
yeah,
about getting the pot of gold, which doesn't play much with Cody in this film as it does with Morty, and of course it becomes Morty's undoing later on in the film. That's if there's one thing that carries over for every one of these films, the Leprechaun films, it is about it all. They all the theme of greed and how much we, as a society, looks at money as the end all be all of everything, and how much we're willing to sacrifice in order to get that money.
and yeah, and well, it's not. It's gold. So in order to understand, I guess, in order to understand gold, you have to. I think a lot of people even may not quite understand how much gold is worth in comparison to money, and the Bridget character doesn't necessarily seem to be too impressed with the gold when she sees it, as someone like Morty would be, someone much younger, because what Morty would understands how much that gold is, but even Cody doesn't seem that interested in trying to get
No,
it.
no, he's stuck. In my opinion, he's stuck in the middle. He's got this mentor in Morty who thinks about nothing but gold, but then he also has this girlfriend who, by the way, is a very strong-willed female character in this film because she never waits for someone to try and save her. She's always trying to find her way out by herself. I actually noticed that for the first time. I was like, oh, this is odd. You're not used to seeing this type of character in these type of low-budget films. So
Yeah, I mean, she kind of, I mean, she kind of annoys me a little bit. I'll do like the strong-willed part of it, but some of this tactics she tries to play later is kind of ridiculous a little bit. I guess the survival instincts
survival.
kick in, but I don't
Well,
know. I do like something about the character just in general. Like it maybe the performance, but it kind of annoys me a little bit. I don't know.
because I watched part 2 and part 3 kind of back to back.
Yeah.
She's a much different type of character than the third film, in which she doesn't really show a strong backbone in the whole film. It was a huge contrast between the two types of women characters, main women
Yeah.
characters, anyways. But
I think it like yeah. I mean, I think you're onto something with that though. I guess I'm just thinking about different parts of the films later on and what happens, but we should wait till we get there. But I think you're onto something with the strong-willed female character on Bridget's character.
yeah, well, you have the Leprechaun, and I'm trying to remember
I'll
exactly.
probably remember.
Well, I'm trying to remember exactly how the Leprechaun first plays into this story because I
Okay.
watched this one and the second, the third
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. I know what you mean. I had to separate them. It's hard, but so what happens in this one? They're doing the tour, and then there's like a tree, the Irish tree, and there's like a bum drinking like some drink, and somehow that brings him out, and then he takes the bum's got like a golden tooth, and he steals it from him, rips his tooth out. That's how he comes out, and he's got this tree. It's an Irish. Actually, it's on. I think apparently it's Harry Houdini's. Hang on a minute. I guess it is Harry Houdini's property is what it says, but he basically there's a tree and they actually go inside the tree and he's got like a lair that's
Yeah.
a big set that's used a lot in the film.
Well, I will say this: that layer is an amazing layer or production design element of the film that actually does a really good. You get to see a lot of it in the last act of the film, and it's actually really impressive compared to some of the stuff you see in some of the later films. So.
Right, right. I guess one thing I didn't mention for those tour guests when he picks them up, one of them's played by Clint Howard,
Yep.
which was a pretty awesome cameo, and his girlfriend or wife's played by Kimmy Robertson, who was in Twin Peaks, played Lucy in Twin Peaks, which I thought was a
Like I
cool
said, they
little
got
bit
some
of
good cameos in this movie.
yeah.
But and that's the thing is, there's also some cameos in the third one too. I recognize like, these are low budget films, but they got some pretty good cameos in them.
But sometimes they'll do people like that will do cameos and they won't charge that much, if not anything. In some instances, I'm not sure what it was here, but sometimes they may know the director or know Warwick Davis because Warwick Davis was on Willow, that directed by Ron Howard. Like so,
Oh yeah,
so he's
that's a good relevant.
Yeah.
I can't even think
I
of
guess putting it together. If I'd have listened to the director's commentary on this, they probably would have said that in the director's commentary too. You know what I'm saying?
Ron Howard was doing Warwick Davis.
Yeah.
His brother going there.
Yeah.
For an extended cameo, by the way. But it's interesting because what we have here is we have Monty, who is greedy beyond all belief, and then of course Cody, who's trying to not only get his girlfriend back from the other guy, Ian.
I didn't write down that. I know what you mean. She basically goes and drops her off at this guy's go-kart place where his guy works, and then she's like hanging out with this guy that I guess it's her ex-boyfriend or some guy that likes her or something. But
yeah, it definitely seems like a guy that likes her because what happens is they're almost fighting over her for a few moments. You obviously get the impression that she is just screwing with Cody when they get back together again.
Well, I guess one thing that's hilarious about the whole situation to me is he goes and walks in there and does all this stuff, but meanwhile there's all these people in the car waiting for him to do the tour, and he'll go and stop and bring her in the go-kart place and have this big fight with this guy. And then when they're back at the bar, he goes in and talks to Morty for like good 5 minutes or more, while these people are just waiting for him to come out of the car to drive it. You know,
Of course, he gets mad because of his girlfriend more or less ditching him, and he ends up running a red light and getting stopped by the cops, which leads him to getting arrested and a whole bunch of other shenanigans that brings Morty to his rescue as his
right.
guardian.
And he sees the bum guy in the police station. That ties in. The guy's like complaining about his tooth being ripped out. That's kind of a rare instance too, where the leprechaun didn't straight up kill that guy. He just ripped his tooth out. Sometimes he just wants to kill him. But the girlfriend, the leprechaun does something very interesting to the guy that's into her, because he does this twice in the film. He makes himself look like Bridget, and he's able to manipulate the guy into thinking he doesn't even. It's not even really him, because it's basically a lawnmower. But he's able to project. I guess it's one of the magical powers that he has. He's able to make people think that they're talking to somebody. He rarely uses it, but he here the guy thinks Bridget. Here the guy thinks Bridget's there, and he walks over, and there's like a running push mower there, and then she takes off her shirt, and you have like an insert of some other woman's boobs there, which clearly weren't Bridget, because they never show her face and the boobs in the same shot. But then the guy, it's a running lawnmower, and he thinks it's boobs. He goes in to motorboat him, and next thing you know, his face his whole head's like exploded from the lawnmower, which isn't that graphic. It's all done in a shadow. You see some blood, but this one's not very graphic in general. There's not like a lot of there's a violence, but it's not nearly as violent as the third one. I think they probably had to cut back on it because of the theatrical release, and the first one very little violence either. But this one does have more kills in it. But when it like they get around like seeing it by seeing like a shadow in the lawnmower going into the guy's face, instead of if it was like a Terrifier film, you would have completely seen that guy's whole face come off and all over the place.
Well, if they were to remake this movie, it'd probably be a lot more violent. I kind of saw these films as not being too overly violent, and the violence is played more for laughs than it is for being violent. Like,
right, yeah,
because like Freddy Krueger, the Warwick Davis's Leprechaun cracks jokes every moment, every time he opens his mouth. Actually,
right, and sometimes they're funny, occasionally. But it's funny that even if they're not funny, Warwick Davis does a good job of balancing the kind of a menacing warlock with the comedy.
Yes,
and even
I see him more like a Forrest J. Ackerman, the stuff that used to be in Famous Monsters of Filmland, that weren't like straight out funny, but just really hokey. And I kind of got most of the lines from Warwick Davis in it, but he does a really good job with presenting those hokey lines.
It don't matter if they're stupid or not. He does such a good job saying them, and they have to rhyme. Every line that he says rhymes for the most part. It's part of what he has to do, I guess.
Yeah, that had to be the hard part of this movie when you're writing the script, is making every one of Warwick Davis's lines rhyme.
Right. Yeah. But so after that, so you get that guy out of the way pretty quick. It's like funny they establish that character and then they get him out of there. But not too long after that, the Bridget character is kidnapped by Warwick Davis and taken into his underground lair, and that's where she spends most of the rest of the movie. Unfortunately, I guess that's the part that kind of annoys me, is that she's kind of tied up for a while. Meanwhile, her boyfriend Cody's trying to him and Morty are trying to get her back, even though Morty's kind of sabotaging everything while they're going. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one thing, but you never see her just sit around and do nothing. She's always trying to come up with a plan to leave. She goes through the tunnels and tries to figure her way out by using the rocks, but then the rocks disappear. She even tries to kill the warlock. The leprechaun at one point. I mean, she's not like sitting there doing nothing.
Right? Yeah, I agree. And it would be really dark if they did this sort of thing and they actually turned her into the leprechaun's bride at the end, instead of like having her get away. You know how messed up that would be? Can you imagine it? It'd be terrible, but it would be like what he tells her. He's like, he has her tied up. He's like, well, he's like, you're gonna have to change your appearance because you look too beautiful. 'Cause once we have the younglings, they're not gonna like you. They might try to eat you or something. But yeah, I mean that wouldn't that be like a crazy ending though if they didn't win the good guys on this
Yeah.
one.
Well, the thing is, Cody and Morty actually come up with a plan because they're not dumb characters. They come up with a plan to actually capture the freaking leprechaun, which is actually quite clever at first by trying to stuff him in an iron safe.
Iron safe, yeah, wrought iron safe. They happen to know where one is. They're lucky they knew that. At the go-kart place.
At the go-kart
yeah. You know what? I think there's a safe in there that's wrought iron.
Well, they see it the very first time they're over there, and then of course it's all foreshadowing for this moment here.
Yeah.
Of course, this time, Morty it's Morty is the one who gets stopped by the cops, and it's Cody who's hiding up in the ceiling. Is it
right? So yeah. There's actually it's like a rent-a-cop. He's like a security guard who shows up at the go-kart place. And then there's like the Warwick Davis gets in the go-kart, and it's got some kind of like armor on it all of a sudden. And
well, it's got armor, and it's got I think it's a shamrock on it as well. I think I noticed it for the first time. Like it's all souped up for him.
Right. That's like something he does a lot in the first film. He only does it once here. Like in the first film, he's always getting on different things, whether it be like a wheelchair or something ridiculous. But this is the only time he does it in this film. It's pretty hilarious, but and then he ends up running over and killing the rent-a-cop.
Yeah.
In a way that's not really shown very good.
Like I said, I think they were they were not trying to be very violent.
Yeah, right, and it works for the most part because it is the kind of film for the most part you could probably show to somebody younger and it not be that big of a deal. Other than this one part that kid would probably go right over kid's head, but he's got the girl tied up and he's like, "Kiss me, I'm Irish," and he leans in and he licks her face and all this gross saliva stuff goes like all milky looking goes all over her face. And he's like, "That's just a taste of things to come." Yeah.
Like I said, Warwick Davis can deliver those crazy hokey lines.
Yeah.
But what I noticed about this, and you're right. This was, even though they're rated R movies, this is more like a PG-13 rated R movie because of how playful it is.
Right.
Do you think that that's something that is what made these films successful enough to keep churning out sequel after sequel after sequel, or do you think it was something else?
Well, as far as like, I think there is some diminishing returns with this franchise. You can see it in between this one and the first one, especially with the box office take on it. Say the first one made $8.5 million at the box office. This one made about $2.5 million. And then after this one, it 2.3 million. But after this one, it started going straight to video. So they saw it as something that could keep going. But luckily I guess that was the time where it was a very popular thing to rent movies. So as far as your question though, as far as like leaving out, they do get more gory with the third one. But I think it does have that horror comedy aspect of it. I think it does have a bit of a charm to it. You gotta know it's ridiculous. The film's ridiculous, and even there's one of the remake ones called Origin where they tried to not be funny, and it just kind of didn't have the same flavor to it. It almost had like it could have been any other horror movie.
Yes, you are correct. I had that same reaction to that one as well. And to be honest with you, the reason why I watched these is because it was Warwick Davis in them. Because except for I think Back to the Hood, which I didn't see until more recently. I kind of stopped right before that one and didn't.
That one's really good. I think that one's better than Back to the Hood, actually.
So I kind of eventually got sick of the franchise after a while.
Yeah.
It took a while though.
Yeah, I guess it had ran its course. I think it's a hard thing. I think because of the time period that it was in the 90s, like when it was going on and straight to video aspect of it, especially after this one, that I think people were wanting to see more of it. At the same, but once it got into, I know Back to the Hood when it came out, that was kind of near the end of all that, this direct to video stuff. It was still kind of, it was kind of there, but it wasn't as big of a deal anymore
Mm.
as it was when it first started.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I honestly can't remember what year that one came out, or what the climate felt like. Because
Yeah.
at some point there was diminishing returns to straight to video because of the fact that people weren't going to video stores as much as they used to go to. But when that second and third movie of Leprechaun came out, people were still renting the crap out of these. I guarantee you, if
Yeah.
you had the figures for the rentals, they would be huge.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure there would be. But
Um,
that, yeah, I remember like Back to the Hood. I actually watched that on DVD. I bought it later on. Like it wasn't when it came out, and but that one surprisingly was. It's been a while since I've seen it too, but I was surprisingly that one was pretty entertaining. They kind of really pushed it with that one. The good thing about the first Hood one is that it does have like Ice-T in it and stuff, but he doesn't return. That's none of these have returning characters except for the one called Leprechaun Returns, and that's kind of it's a direct sequel to the first one. They kind of did what they did with Halloween, and they had a direct sequel to the first one, but that's the only time they did that. But I guess what I was going to say is I wonder how it would be if they actually tied them together and had some kind of I think now people want that more. Back then they didn't want that. They wanted to be able to reset with each movie, and you could just go to any one of them and it wouldn't matter without having to know the continuity of what happened before that.
No, no, I agree. I think that was on purpose that none of these movies in this franchise were direct sequels. I think it was just you're going to go see Warwick Davis and you're going to go see him kill some people as a leprechaun, and that's all you really need to know.
Yeah, I think it's funny that the first like two and three they just call it Leprechaun 2 and Leprechaun 3. They don't bother with anything else. At the time, it was just like straight up like I actually like it like that when they just straight up just call it like it's the second one or even with the Terrifier movie they started doing that too. They're not calling it like Terrifier 3 something with the subtitle. It's just like
Like
or
Leprechaun
sometimes they even
4
yeah.
in space. I think it's Leprechaun 4 in space.
Right, and you had to call it in space. You couldn't avoid that one. But really, even Back to the Hood, I mean, in the Hood, they had to do it. But it's just funny with the first three. It's just like Leprechaun 2, which I mean, should be like Leprechaun 2, maybe Bride of the Leprechaun, and then Leprechaun 3, Leaving Las Vegas, or Leprechaun 3 in Vegas is what it is. But
Oh my god. I lost track of what I was going to say because we got off on track of on how they should have called these movies.
oh yeah. Well, as far as back in the actual movie, we were talking about so she's kidnapped and in the lair, and then Morty and Morty has a plan. The first plan he tries to do is get the leprechaun drunk when he kind of brings him to like a bar, and that's I guess one thing he does have a plan that works, but at the same time his biggest fail is when he starts to gloat about it. When Morty's like drinking a fake drink, and then the leprechaun's drinking like a real drink, and he gets completely wasted, hammered, and he tries to levitate an ashtray, and he can hardly even do that. He's so drunk.
Which is really funny because next we see him at an espresso cafe where he's drinking an espresso to sober up.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of them. He's got like probably 10 espressos that he's drank. But what's interesting about that scene too, that's really the only scene that's really gory. There's like the guy working there for some reason, like it keeps insulting him. He like keeps making fun of him for like no particular reason, but it's pretty hilarious. But it's like, wow, why is he doing that?
He's a customer at your store. Why are you?
Yeah. Not to be, yeah. It's like he's assuming that he's like a little person, but he's just making fun of him and all this, and who eventually has to kill him because he just can't handle him making fun of him.
Oh my
I mean,
god!
he kind of would have liked to kill him anyway, but then he gives him a reason to kill him.
Yeah. Well, you're right. It's one of the goriest moments in the film because obviously we see his face being steamed.
Yeah.
By the espresso machine, which is actually funny and gory at the same time.
Oh yeah, there's the shots of those boobs earlier on that may be kind of tough for younger I mean, obviously younger people would love seeing it, but it might be from a parent's point of view, they might think those boobs might be offensive. It's,
Oh my God.
they're
Yeah.
clearly not the actress's boobs. It's like so obvious.
Oh my God. Well, there's a lot more of that in the third one. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
oh yeah.
But
Um, but okay, and then of course, I know they Morty and Cody capture the leprechaun in the safe, and then of course Morty gets greedy. Like he's been greedy the whole film, so you're kind of wondering why we didn't see this coming. That he gets greedy with the leprechaun.
yeah, he's a really shady guy. That they got him planned, they got him trapped. Everything's gonna be fine. And of course, like the movie's not over yet, so they had to have Morty go and try to make a deal with him. And it's never going to go over well when any character tries to make a deal with the leprechaun. The best thing to do is walk away. You know.
So this is the thing I know, and I don't remember this in the first film. And the rule is different in the third film. Is that in this film, you can make 3 wishes with the leprechaun, whereas in the third film, you only get 1 if you have 1 of his coins.
Yeah, the coin is, and that's a real confusing thing about the second and third one is the coin thing. Because in this one, he drops a coin and Cody picks it up. Excuse me, and then that's why he has to go back because he goes back to his lair and he basically takes all his gold, he dumps it all over Bridget, and that's when she's not impressed with it. You would think if she was impressed with gold at that point, she'd be like, "Wow, that's pretty impressive gold you got there," but she just wants to get out of there. But he starts counting it all and he's like, "Oh wow, one's missing," so that's why he has to leave her, and that's a plot point with the gold, and he ends up with the gold. And like you're saying, I don't even think he gets 3 wishes because he traps him in the safe. I don't think it has to do with the gold.
I don't
Gold
think it
wishes are
has
in the
either
third
to
ones.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think in the second movie it has to deal with the gold coin like it does in the third movie. That's why I said the rules change.
Yeah, yeah,
And he
yeah.
gets 3 wishes in this film. Uh,
Yeah. And and it's never going to go good. If someone offers you wishes, just say go fuck yourself. I don't want them.
yeah, wishes in movies don't normally work out so well.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so you should stay away from them.
Even like I've seen, like, obviously it's all movies, but even like in some movies they actually try to get a contract out and draw it out, and some kind of loophole always they always end up getting screwed, because it's just too many ways of taking something. Like you say, you wish something and then but Morty makes some real dumb decisions here. And
Yeah.
yeah, the first wish is he wants his gold, because he instead of just saying give me a bunch of money, he decides just he intentionally wants the leprechaun's gold because he knows the leprechaun wants it, and so that's the first thing he does. And then the leprechaun gives it to him, but he ends up in his stomach. And then the second wish is like he's like, I'll get it out, but you have to, the next wish has to be get me out of the safe. So then he falls for that and he gets out of the safe and he wishes it to be taken out, and then he rips open his stomach and takes the pot out of his stomach. So it's pretty
Yeah.
gruesome, really.
Well, it's funny because the pot of gold in his stomach is a funny visual because it's literally the pot
Yeah, right.
of
Yeah,
gold.
yeah, yeah.
So it's funny, but then of course he slashes it open and there's just a little blood, but it's just the idea that he slashes the stomach open and he pulls out the pot of gold.
You're right, right. It kills him pretty good, and that's it for Morty.
Yeah, and that's it for Morty. And the thing is, you like his character in this movie, even though he's a big drunk and he's greedy. But any person in these movies that's too greedy ends up on the wrong end of the leprechaun's claws. It's not surprising that Morty's going to get it because from the very beginning, he's like the greediest person in the entire movie.
Right. Yeah, I would have liked to. I think when I first saw it, I didn't like that he died like that because I did like the character, and I wanted him not to be so damn stupid, not to make those mistakes that he makes. But I guess it works for the film because they really want to set up the main character as the protagonist. But I do like, I mean, that type of character is the actor playing him does a really good job.
Oh yeah,
those type of characters are usually pretty fun in films. When So when Erin's down there, when she comes up with the plan, that the leprechaun returns and he gives her like a red dress. So she's gotten dressed up in this red dress, and she looks pretty hot in it. and she comes out and she starts trying to act like she's into him,
Mm-hmm.
and he's kind of falling for it. And then she takes an awl and like a sharp pointed tool and tries to hit him in the head with it when it breaks it, and he like starts. And then he's just like, "Oh, that's my favorite owl. I can't believe you did that. It was like my father's." Which is a pretty hilarious scene, because he doesn't like try to do anything to her. He's just like bitches about or complains about the owl getting broken, So, but
Well, go ahead.
then she uses it again to get out of something a little bit after that. But
Yeah. Well, like I said, she's very intuitive and always trying to get herself out of those situations. But what's funny is that the leprechaun is like almost like he knows everything she could possibly think about and has a counter for it all. Even when it comes to Morty and every other character that comes in contact with him, he turns their not just their wishes but their ideals upside down, and plays them against themselves, which I thought was funny.
yeah, I think. Well, the thing is, though, I think Morty's plan would have worked because he does get him drunk and he does get him
Yeah,
trapped in the safe, but it's just they just after they get him trapped, they get a little too Morty gets a little too
greedy.
full of himself and greedy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he thinks he's too
You're right.
smart.
He's always saying he's smarter than everyone else.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
an Achilles heel. It's his undoing. But
The Leprechaun's really smart himself. I'm surprised he even fell for some of that because it was pretty obvious. It's not necessarily the safe. They got him pretty good with that because they got him to run into the dog door, and then he ended up in the safe. But when they tried to drink him under the table, you think he would have picked that up though. But he was, I guess, the Leprechaun's they kind of got some hubris going on too because he was like going to drink the guy under the table and he was going to prove it.
yeah, yeah. What was I about to say? Oh, but we then come up with the next the one foreshadowing from the beginning that's very important, which is the drunk guy whose tooth gets ripped out from the leprechaun, who then goes to the police station and is claiming a leprechaun did it. To which Cody has actually listened to all this information and he knows where the leprechaun's lair is. Um, I think that's about the only reason why the bum is alive and not killed in the entire film is because he sets up the whole plot point of where Cody can find and save.
Oh, the tree. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Otherwise, they would have killed him pretty good. Yeah,
And
thing.
then you'd have to wonder how Cody would figure out where the hell to go to find Bridget. I think because you brought up
Yeah,
something, the leprechaun doesn't leave many people alive. After
yeah, yeah. He typically likes killing them pretty good. The only way I could think of if they could have written it in a way earlier, like when he's on the tour and he goes by the tree, if Cody would have interacted, but then he would have known about the leprechaun earlier in the script than otherwise. But
Hmm.
I think that would have been the better way of doing it, really, though. Was like
So,
if Cody saw him come out of the tree to begin with,
hmm.
but I don't know.
Hmm.
It's not how it's written, though. So it's
Well,
I don't know.
once Cody gets into the cave and in the lair, they learn firsthand that they're kind of trapped in this cave, this leprechaun's lair
Yeah.
mazes.
Right, yeah, it's and they go in it really only has like two different openings. They go into one and then they come directly out the other one, so it kind of goes around in a circle. But I guess it's kind of it changes as well, so they say it in the dialogue. And get separated for some reason, like Cody and Bridget, they get separated. Then when he goes back to find her, the leprechaun's doing that shtick again where he's
Yes.
I don't know if he's acting like he's her or if it's like an imaginary person there. I think because of the lawnmower scene, I think it's not necessarily the leprechaun that he's interacting with, and I think it's maybe just something in the air, maybe. But she actually kisses him as the leprechaun as her kisses him. So I don't, but I think that the way it's presented earlier, I don't think it's actually the leprechaun doing it himself. Obviously, he's making her look like that, but he's not kissing the guy himself. I don't think.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
I don't
but
know. No, that's a good question. It's a good question. But he does once he reveals his ruse because he's gotten his last gold coin. He does make Bridget reappear. the real Bridget reappear, and of course he's happy, happy, joy, joy. I've got my coin, I got my coin, blah 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 blah
Yeah. But
blah.
there, and that, so what happens too, like two things happen with that. He has earlier, he's in the bathroom at the bar, and Tony Cox comes in there. He's dressed like a leprechaun. Tony Cox from Bad Santa. He plays like the elf in that. But he comes in dressed like the leprechaun, and he gives him like a gold like candy, like the candy wrapped in gold. And so that's why which is a pretty hilarious scene actually, but it's very random. But that's why he has the gold, like a chocolate gold coin. So he gives it to the leprechaun. The leprechaun thinks he has the real coin for a minute, but he really doesn't.
Yeah.
And that's when he's also got a piece of wrought iron. I don't remember how he got that, but he does have it in his hand in that last scene. And
Yeah,
that's when
he takes it. I can't remember where he takes it from, but he takes it and he's holding it the whole time. And you kind of forget he has it until this scene here, the ending where he's about to kill the leprechaun, and of course the leprechaun throws him backwards and seemingly impales Cody, and Cody is dead. But
right. That's when he gives him like the fake coin though. He's got the real coin that protects him. The leprechaun can't hurt him as long as he's got the coin on him.
mm-hmm. Yeah, another rule that gets broken between movies.
Yeah, well, that's specifically for this film.
Yeah,
I think each leprechaun has a different set of rules. I can say it's like a different. I think it's a different character almost, even though he kind of acts the same. But I think it's a different leprechaun each time.
All the leprechauns look the same.
Yeah,
they're all from the same brood. The same.
Yeah.
But of course, Cody has been playing the leprechaun, and leprechaun did not kill Cody with the wrought iron, but Cody then impales the leprechaun with the wrought iron, and of course, he dies.
Yeah, and he dies pretty graphically. He explodes, and his body's all over the place. So seems pretty dead at the end of this one, that particular one. He may be able to regenerate himself. I guess he would probably be able to, but that's not. But it doesn't seem to follow the continuity in the third one from where it ends up in this one.
No. This is like very self-contained.
Yeah.
After I rewatched the second and third one, I realized, oh yeah, these are so different in terms of leprechauns.
Well, what's funny is like watching them before when they first came out, it never really dawned on me about the continuity or even that. I guess I always just assumed it was it was continuing the story from the other ones, but it's always a different. It starts in a different place because this one doesn't start in the well, and then the next one doesn't start with him reattaching himself back together in some way. They kind of like they would even do that in a lot of the Hammer Dracula films. They would try to keep continuity about how Dracula comes back to life in some ways, but not always. It just depends on the script. If they could fit it into the script. Yeah. They wanted to go to Vegas and they didn't want to have to revisit this. So
No. And that's one of the things that I actually I think was the appeal for these type of things. I just with this film, you have a graphic ending to the Leprechaun, and of course, the thing that the kicker is that they have the coin, the gold coin at the end of the film, but they don't need it anymore. They don't take it upon or anything. They literally throw it away. Which I can't remember what they did in the first movie, but they do this in the second and third movie where they discard the coin, which to me was a symbol of, oh shit, they're not the greedy ones of the film. Of course, they're going to survive, and they don't need the gold that could possibly be worth thousands of dollars, if not has magical properties. They don't need any of that. So that's how we end this film, which is completely self-contained, and you don't have to actually watch it with any of the other ones in mind.
But I mean, I think I missed it on this. I liked it that the main characters get away like that, but they didn't. They should have had another scene of the Leprechaun coming back to life or something, or maybe just his hand moving or something.
Yeah, which was prevalent in most, sequels back then.
Yeah.
Some type of little oomph at the end.
Yeah, because it's just like a cheesy last shot because they throw the coin away and then they start to walk down the stairs and turn around and start making out. And that was like that was a pretty famous thing in a lot of horror movies from this time period where a lot of them just end with this guy and a girl turning and kissing and making out, and that's the end of the movie. I guess a lot of older movies did that too, especially like I've seen it before in a lot of older films specifically. It just ends with like the guy and the girl kissing at the end, but I think it's kind of cheesy here. Yeah, I think I didn't mind it. I would have liked. It's always weird to me too when they're going to make out in a weird situation. Like to me, I would be traumatized. I would be glad to get the girl and get the fuck out, but it's like let's get out of here. It's like that leprechaun could come back. Let's go. Instead of turning around and making out, or like they're walking like it's like a regular day in the park, and they're gonna, it's yeah. I don't.
No. I won't disagree with you. Having just rewatched the second and third movies, I won't disagree with you on these. And to be honest with you, I've probably only ever seen this movie probably 3 times, and that's about it. The Leprechaun franchise is not.
You've probably seen it more than most people, though. Yeah. I think I've seen it 3 or 4 times myself.
We laugh at this film. Yeah, I remember when it originally was released, and then I bought it on DVD with the box set, so I have all of them. And then now for this, and that's about the only times I've seen it.
Right. Yeah.
I've seen the first one probably 5 or 6 times. I really have seen the first one 5 or 6 times. But yeah.
Yeah. I've seen the first one, and I've seen the In Space one probably more than any of the other ones. Because In Space is so ridiculous. It's
oh my god.
Just that, yeah, so dumb.
Oh Jesus. Okay, so do you have any final words about Leprechaun 2?
I don't right now. I think I've said it about all I got on this one, I think.
All right.
I don't think I missed anything too interesting.
All right, so what we do in our shows, we like to rate the movies from 1 to 5, 1 being very bad film to 5 stars being an excellent film. Where on the spectrum does Leprechaun 2 fall for you?
Oh man, so this is kind of a hard one for me, but this is probably of all the Leprechaun films, this is probably my least favorite out of all of them, and I'm gonna put it at a 2.5 star.
Well, you're being more generous than me. I would have gone with a 2 stars for me. But the thing is, for me, this actually has. I actually like the production values for this, and I do like the set for the layer.
Right. Yeah, it has some positive attributes for sure.
And I like the cameos in this film. But as they went on, I started to dislike them more and more. I didn't like some aspects in the third film, and we'll talk about that in that podcast. And by the fourth film, when we get around to it, since I'm sure we will eventually get around to the fourth film, I only ever seen that one once and never bothered to watch it again.
It's a bad one though. It's really bad. It's the fourth one. But it's in space, so
it's in space.
It's like an alien clone, like that's what they were all doing. They're just cloning aliens.
I see that as a duplicate copy of the Critters 4 in Space movie. It came out around the same time, and it seemed like the fourth part of the franchise needed to go into space for some odd fucking reason.
Yeah.
And that's about all I remember about Leprechaun 4. So 2 stars for me. That being said, I want to thank you, Dave, for joining us on Conversations in Horror for this St. Patty's Day presentation of Leprechaun 2. Everyone out there, I hope that you've gotten at least some type of insight on Leprechaun 2, whether you've seen the movie before or not, because it's St. Patty's Day. What other day will you enjoy Warwick Davis as a leprechaun, just randomly and just killing people and having fun doing it? With that, I want to wish you all a great St. Patty's Day. Make sure to check out some of our previous episodes that we've done, especially last year when we did the original Leprechaun. So check that out. But we've done a lot of great films previously, and we're going to have a lot more coming up in the year 2025. So please make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to us on all your favorite podcast apps, Spotify, and YouTube. So thank you so much for joining us, and have a pleasant day. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, written, produced, and directed by Kevin L. Powers, executive producer Kelly A. Inoka. All contents and material from this episode of Conversations in Horror is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures.